Hello, everybody, and welcome into the recruiting rundown here on Gamecock Central. Kendall Smith and Wes Mitchell coming at you here. And Wes, it's been a couple of weeks, but we are officially back to talking about high school recruiting. We talked for so long there about the transfer portal, what was happening for South Carolina. That is officially done and over until the next portal cycle. But we've got a lot going on in the world of high school recruiting. Most recently, Junior Day Carolina on Saturday, a couple of big names on campus. But let's start off broad, Wes. What was the reaction from Junior Day?
Yeah, a successful junior day for South Carolina, and we are officially back to high school recruiting, like you said. Class of 2026 on the clock. Coaches are on the road right now visiting some of these very prospects, checking in with them. Recently, the NCAA last couple of years changed the rules so that coaches can actually meet with what are rising seniors, currently juniors in high school, in person. So you've seen a lot of that on social media if you follow this stuff where, Beamer's been out, assistant coaches have been out. So really they are laying the foundation for this 2026 class. Obviously, South Carolina already has some guys committed, but for the most part, this is when these guys are starting to set those top fives, top threes, set their official visits, and then, of course, ultimately make a decision. But junior days, as South Carolina had this past Saturday, a big just part of the process where prospects are getting a feel for your school. And Kendall, very fitting that we have a Charlotte background for you right there, because some of the best prospects in the state of North Carolina were in Columbia on Saturday.
Well, you actually just stole my thunder with that line. I was going to segue into our next segment by saying, yes, we have this gorgeous Charlotte skyline behind me and a couple of guys we're going to talk about today on the recruiting rundown from the Charlotte area who are at Junior Day on Saturday with South Carolina. The first being Rodney Dunham, 4-star edge from Providence Day. Potential to be a 5-star, though, Wes. Just everyone keep that in mind as we talk about this. But with Dunham and his visit on Saturday to South Carolina, where do things stand with his recruitment right now?
Yeah, you don't get the feeling he's ready to make a decision anytime too soon, but I think you can especially say early on, South Carolina is very much in this one. They are in the top group. And another great job by Sterling Lucas of just getting involved early, getting him on campus a bunch. He was on campus for games this past year, and then just getting him back really for their first major recruiting event of this year, of 2025 as a calendar year, I think speaks volumes to how interested he is. Now, this is going to be one of those big boy recruiting battles we talk about. He is the number 3 edge prospect in the country. He's a top 20 player. Typically, by the end of the process, On3 has 32 5-stars, which lines up perfectly with the 32 NFL draft picks for the first round. If you sort of transport their careers forward, you're trying to project that. And so if he were to stay where he is at or even move up, he would ultimately be a 5-star, like you said. So this is a big-time prospect. Overall industry ranking, number 26 in the country. On3 has him number 19. 24/7 actually has him as high as number 9. So he's a top 10 overall prospect in the country, according to those guys. And it's sort of that elite edge rusher that you want if you're South Carolina, or really if you're anybody. Everybody wants this kid, and you can see why. But we saw Carolina dip into North Carolina a little bit more this past recruiting cycle. They're trying to do it again, and then some in this recruiting cycle.
Well, the North Carolina trend continues, not just with Dunham, but Aiden Harris as well. I got to give a shout out to Weddington High School. It's where I went to school. It's where Aiden goes to school right now. He's the number 1 defensive lineman in the country. He was in town in Columbia this past weekend. Wes, what is the word with Harris?
Yeah, and, with Harris, this was a situation where we had not gotten wind that this visit was happening. We knew Dunham was going to visit, and then boom, next thing you know, you got the number 1 defensive lineman in the country, another top North Carolina prospect on campus as well. And Aiden Harris, a kid that also has had high interest in South Carolina, basically told South Carolina, or told On3 that he had a great time on the visit. He had fun with the staff, had fun being around the coaches. And one of the trends you see from a lot of these players is that they just like the people that these coaches are and the support staff are. That was one thing, just one of the overarching things from the junior day was talking about that, and also talking about the strength and conditioning staff seemed to be something that popped up quite a bit. So yet another top prospect from the state of North Carolina, another guy that we don't even have on our list to talk about here, Kendall, but I wanted to just make sure we mention too, Gordon Sellers is a 4-star wide receiver, also from North Carolina. He was in with his family, had a great time too. So you can kind of see, I don't know if partially it's just kind of how it's worked out with those top guys being in the state of North Carolina, but the coaches would love for this to be a big year for them, especially with there being a coaching change at UNC. That they really want to sort of have a good bit of success in that state.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've seen the success that South Carolina has had in state, obviously. So being able to cross into North Carolina and make things happen there, really, really big. And you talk about Harris. Last year, I had the chance to be the sideline reporter for the North Carolina High School Athletic Association state championship. Weddington was in that game. Unbelievable, Aiden Harris. Like, the second I saw him, he was a sophomore last year. I'm like, yeah, that guy's going on to do big things. So really big get for South Carolina if they're able to make that happen. And we will certainly keep you all updated as these stories continue to develop with all of these recruits, as we always do on GamecockCentral.com. Wes and Chris do a fantastic job of that. But we just talked about all of the North Carolina guys. We got to give some love to South Carolina as well. South Carolina's done such a good job, again, in-state recruiting. So where do they stand right now with the class of 2026 in terms of guys from South Carolina, Wes?
Yeah, I think this was a big weekend for that as well, Kendall. Obviously, we know, they've already got some guys committed. You look at Jazavian Currents from South Point, Jamel House from Newberry. Currents was supposed to be there this weekend. I think he made it in. But this was a big weekend, in my opinion, for some of the uncommitted guys, because there's been a trend where South Carolina has gotten in incredibly early on a lot of these prospects and kind of built these leads. But now, as the process has worn on, as more and more schools become aware of their talents and how good they are, you're starting to see kind of, I guess, the competition show its face with several players that are in state. I look at Contavian Anderson from Dorman. He's someone South Carolina was in on early, has gotten on campus a bunch. I would say behind the scenes, it felt like they had a lead, but Clemson has recently offered. So Clemson heavily involved now. They got him back on campus on Saturday. Tamarian Watkins from Northwestern. He's a big safety, sort of high, like almost like a hybrid athlete type defensive player. Carolina, first major offer for him. Recently, you have Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M all offering him. So obviously, when everybody hears those names, that speaks to him being a big-time prospect there in Rock Hill. Got him back on campus with his family. He had a really good time. I still hear that South Carolina is the favorite there from what I'm hearing out of York County, but definitely some competition there now. And then Desmond Green, offensive lineman from Timberland, they got him back on campus. Georgia has kind of become a major factor there right now. There's a lot of buzz about the Bulldogs. That's one I don't really have a great feel for at this point in terms of what this weekend did. It was South Carolina was the clear favorite early on. Then there's been a lot of Georgia buzz here lately, Kendall. So we'll kind of have to monitor that one and see where it goes. But so far, you would say South Carolina is off to a good start in-state recruiting. It's just going to be a matter of what direction do these battles take, because there is still an opportunity, I think, for Carolina to almost like kind of knock it out of the park like they did this last recruiting cycle in terms of getting most, if not all, the in-state guys that they want to get. Jalen McGill, by the way, a running back we've talked about, he committed to Rutgers, which is kind of a random outcome there. Committed to Rutgers over the weekend. That's someone South Carolina, I believe, will remain involved with. And I doubt that recruitment is over. So that's something to keep an eye on. But as of right now, he is committed to Rutgers. And you would say, at least in terms of the recruiting rankings, is the top running back in the state of South Carolina for the class of 2026.
Well, these junior days, so important. It seemed like South Carolina had a pretty good one this past weekend. Wes, as you mentioned, the coaches out on the road now trying to persuade a lot of these high school guys to come to Columbia and play for the Gamecocks. So as we look ahead over this next month or so, what does the recruiting schedule look like for South Carolina?
Yeah, very similar. They'll finish out their on the road stuff. I don't know the exact schedule for when they'll be off the road, but this past week, that's really what it's been. They've been all over the country. You look, Samari Matthews is another from Huff High School there in North Carolina, another major target. They were overseeing him earlier this week. So a lot of it is just that on the road. Then, of course, they'll get back. And the next step is kind of spring football practice, where they'll be, of course, have their current players, but they'll have prospects visiting for that. I imagine a couple other junior days in there. And a big part of the logistics of right now is just going ahead and setting those official visits. So you're already starting to see prospects make their plans usually for June, but going ahead and getting us a head start on that. Darius Gray, 4-star offensive lineman, he actually just announced today that he's going to visit South Carolina in June, as well as his other 4 visits. So this is a big kind of logistics, sort of planning, scheduling type month, or the next few months will be. And even then, those things, as we know in recruiting, it's always a little bit fluid, but you do at least get an early idea. If you like really follow this stuff and care about following recruiting, you start to get an early idea. Where is that true mutual interest? As we know, if a kid's setting an official visit, that typically means the school is very interested in that prospect, and that prospect is very interested in that school.
Well, we're starting to get to the exciting time, as you mentioned, where we get those official visits, obviously get all of the feedback as well. So this 2026 class will really start to come together here over the next few months, which is very, very exciting. Again, visit GamecockCentral.com for more up-to-date information, analysis, and breaking news. Wes, thanks so much, as always, for your insight. We appreciate it. And thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in to this edition of the Recruiting Rundown. We will be back soon here with more. So for Wes Mitchell, I'm Kendall Smith. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. This has been the Recruiting Rundown here on Gamecock Central.